So we're starting early.
Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't get.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, guys, Coach Steve. We have an amazing episode for you guys today. We are in the last day or so of August. College football starts kind of tonight, even though it started over the weekend. NFL starts a week from today. It is bonkers what is going on in the world right now. The world is great in terms of fantasy football and everything else. I can't say for sure, but with football, it's a great time of year right now. So, but guys, we figured we would skip our Monday podcast in the offseason and do it Thursday because, 53-man roster happened on Tuesday. It's just better if we just have a overall last day before drafts. I'm sure a lot of you are drafting this weekend. I'm drafting this weekend. Coach Tyler, man, what's going on? Welcome into the show. Are you drafting this weekend?
Love, guys. Yes, I am drafting this. I actually have a draft all the way up to Tuesday next week. My last draft will be Tuesday next week. But yeah, excited. We're finally here. Me and Coach Steve were just talking before we started about all the college football week 1 stuff kicking off. And then we're a week from actual NFL football that counts. And then we have, I think it's 5 straight days of NFL football after a 5 straight day slate of college football starting today. So it's prime time. We're in the good part of the year.
The best time of year. So, but this is the last show we got for you guys until the season. We'll be back on Thursdays talking starting sits, and on Mondays we'll have at some point, don't know what time on Mondays, but we'll have a waiver wire show here and there. But Thursdays are our big start and sit shows on 6 p.m. Eastern time. We have a comment already in the chat. Who is it? Oh, hey guys, what's going on? Sure, how are you? Welcome back into the show. You were here with us last year. Love that. Happy Thursday. I'm in a 10-man PPR keeper league. I have a pick 9. What should be my strategy and what should I do with my first pick? My keeper is Rashard White. So Tyler, I guess, is it just one keeper? I'm assuming maybe everyone's just keeping one keeper. Who do you think would be there at the 109 right now?
If it's one keeper, I feel like most people are going to be keeping that receiver. Just in my mind. So that sort of top bulk of that first round ADP that we would think of would be gone. I would say aim receiver because I feel like anyone that has a high value running back will have them off the board. And you already have Rashad White who, will slot in nicely to help sort of formulate that room a little bit. He's not a terrible RB1 to have on your team. So I think aim for the wide receiver position just because it should be deeper coming off of those keepers. I mean, even if the other 9 people take receivers, you're still probably have a better odds of getting a higher rated receiver in terms of overall rankings than running back.
Yeah, I agree. And in PPR leagues, Rashard White is the kind of safe running back to own, obviously, right now. I mean, this is where you, I think, early on target wide receiver. And if there's a running back that, or any other position that kind of you see as value, go that direction here. But I always like to get my wide receivers, at least the elite wide receivers that I know are going to have high reception totals in a full PPR league here. So it makes it much easier than in a half-point PPR league where you kind of have to go back and forth. But go wide receiver early. Find those wide receivers that you believe could be close to 100 reception type of receiver in 2024. So, all right. I forgot where I was today. Gosh. So like I said, guys, we have this one last show for you guys. We're going to break down a lot of different things, all the transactions, injury report. We're going to go over some risers and fallers on ADP right now. We're going to talk about waivers. We're going to talk about some buys and sells for dynasty at the very end, if we get there. But we're definitely going to break in a lot of different things here, kind of catching you guys up from the offseason here, or at least the last week, to be honest here. So let's get into it here. We're not going to waste any more time. So we're starting off with transactions. A lot of transactions, obviously, with the 53-man roster cut downs, things happened. Obviously, some players signed, like Donald Parham signed over with Denver. He got cut from the Chargers. Samaje Perine lands with Kansas City after getting cut from Denver. Dalvin Cook hasn't heard his name all offseason, but finally finds a landing spot on the Dallas Cowboys practice squad at the moment. You have Tim Patrick, who's on the Lions practice squad right now. Juju signed with Kansas City after being cut from the Patriots after a terrible contract that he signed with them last year. So good for the Patriots doing well. Jahan Dotson got traded over the last week and a half since we've been on the show. That was wild. And Malik Willis also got traded to the Packers for like a 7th round pick. So, but let's stick to this one side first here. Obviously, I think the biggest one here is Samaje Perine. I don't know how you feel about this title, but I feel like of that one side here, Samaje Perine is the most important asset to talk about right now.
I feel like either Perine or Cook, just because of how sort of jumbled Dallas is. Obviously Zeke is the name that everyone loves there, especially the Cowboys fans. And he isn't coming off of a terrible season, but he's an older back that I think leads the NFL in touches since his career started. If not, he's second to like Derrick Henry only. But, that's a room that if Dalvin Cook comes back and, he said the cliche, typical everything coming off an injury, I feel the best I've ever felt in my life. If he really feels that way, if he really, comes in and dominates, I know the plan was to sign him to the practice squad and then elevate him to the active roster, most likely before week 1, if not a little bit after, just to see how things play out. But that running back room is such a jumble of who's going to be the guy and if there is even going to be a guy or it's just going to be a major committee trying to figure it out, that Dalvin Cook, if he comes back, could be a guy to take over that room.
That's fair. Yeah, it's an interesting signing. Name value obviously sticks out in fantasy football with Dalvin Cook. Again, last year was not good for him. Again, is there a chance he bounces back like Coach Tyler just said? Kind of like, yeah, sure. Maybe there's a chance for him to kind of rebound. I just don't think you bring back Zeke, you're not going to not use Zeke. You might be up and down with Rico Dowling. I mean, I kind of liked him a little bit as a sleeper this year. That might have kind of fallen off a little bit just now with the Dalvin Cook situation here. To me, it just gets messier and messier for Dallas when they didn't really have a really strong offensive line to begin with. So I'm kind of fading this whole backfield now. I really don't want to be any part of it. It used to be a backfield to own, but I don't think so. Like I said, Samaje Perine is interesting. I think it hurts the value of Isaiah Pacheco just all but slightly because, I was talking about Isaiah Pacheco, like, no more Jerick McKinnon. The targets are going to go his way now. Oh, the one thing that Samaje Perine is really great at is catching the ball out of the backfield and pass protection. So is Isaiah Pacheco going to turn back into that 2-down back? I mean, I've seen people be taking him at the early 2nd round. I don't think he's a 2nd round pick at this moment. 3rd round pick, late 3rd round pick still for me. That's kind of why I value him, especially with Perine does end up having an impact. And if he does, that will tell you something there. Albert has a question in the chat, guys. Keep DJ Moore in the 6th or James Cook in the 8th? I'm already keeping Devon A-Chain in round 14.
I like Cook there. Just kind of the uncertainty of who's going to come out of the Chicago room. I think that Moore is going to be the number 1 guy in that receiving core, but there's just a lot of mouths to feed. So that number 1 could be 150 targets. That number 1 could be 120 targets. And then whatever DJ Moore does with it after that. But James Cook is going to be the focal point in their offense, really. They don't have a ton to throw to. Obviously, the offense is still going to run through Josh Allen. But once we saw the new offensive coordinator take over midway through last year, we saw a lot more focus on the backfield, a lot more focus on James Cook. And you're keeping him in the 8th round. So you're getting that 6th round pick to replace DJ Moore.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with that too. I think having those running backs, I think just take the better value with Cooks in the 8th round. And then you, like we mentioned before, if people there, you're keeping 2 keepers, there's still going to be probably a ton of wide receivers on the board that you can just then start taking in the earlier rounds. And then, but you already have your 2 running backs for the season, which Cooks, I think, is reliable where A-Chain's a little boom or bust. And I think you could rock both these guys right there rather than taking DJ Moore in the 6th round. So All right. On the flip side, Frank Gore got cut. Terrence Marshall did sign with the 49ers. Donovan Peoples-Jones signed back with the Lions. Noah Brown signed with the Commanders, which could be interesting. He's a name in Dynasty you might want to keep on your mind, just because he had that one great season a couple years ago. They don't really have a strong wide receiver too. Obviously, Jahan Dotson got traded. We're all, looking forward to guys like Anami Brown or Luke McCaffrey to step up in that offense. And Noah Brown has been a solid veteran, so he's not a name to sleep on. Demetrius Prince got cut, which, again, surprisingly, he got cut once again after having another phenomenal training camp. Kadarius Toney got cut. Paris Campbell got cut. CeeDee Lamb got paid. Great for him. Second highest paid wide receiver in the league right now. Gotta love that. Again, that's really it for transactions here. None of them are I think too standout-ish. Terry McLaurin to the moon. But that's really about it. So, all right, injury roundup. Players that are on IR, they're season-ending IRs too. AJ Dillon, neck injury, out for the season. Jelani Woods, again, is going to miss another season, but I don't believe it's hamstring. I think it's his knee or something like that, or ankle injury that he's out for the season for, pretty sure. Chase Edmonds, out for the season. Elijah Mitchell, he is also out for the season as well. We'll talk about some of their backups eventually, and maybe some of the free agency previews. We'll get to them, but all out for the season. For the pump list, Coach Chow, I'll have you talk about this in a second here, but Odell Beckham on the pump, Kendrick Miller, I don't know if it's the pump or he's just on IR, Tyler Higbee on the pump, Kendrick Bourne on the pump, Jonathan Brooks on the pump, TJ Hawkinson on the pump, Keontae Mitchell on the pump, Nick Chubb on the pump here. So mostly, I think, Coach Tyler, out of the people that are actually really relevant, like Jonathan Brooks, TJ Hawkinson, Nick Chubb, are you drafting these guys now knowing that they're going to miss the first 4 games of the season, potentially more? Maybe not Brooks, but.
Yeah. So I feel for sure going into draft season that we knew that Brooks and Hawkinson were going to be at least pup guys starting out. TJ Hawkinson back into the year, torn ACL. You just really don't expect him to be ready by week 1. And if he is, then you don't necessarily trust that he's ready for week 1, and he's just kind of forced himself out there. And Jonathan Brooks, same thing, coming off that torn ACL. That was really baked into his price in drafts. Everyone is expecting him to go out there and be dominant when he's fully healthy, but you're still getting him around, running back 24, 25 in drafts. And so people are really expecting that, 4 games, that slow start. With Brooks, he's a guy that I do like later in drafts, especially if he is falling down the board. I don't think he's going to be at his full potential at any point this year. I think 2025 is going to be the year that we see Jonathan Brooks in his full capacity. But 80% Jonathan Brooks with volume could still be great for a playoff run, right? Could still be great for a team trying to make the playoffs, or if you really need that depth and your team is worn down going into the end of the season. If you have like an IR spot in your redraft league for some reason, he's a great guy to have and stash there, and then just pick someone else up to hold. But he's really the only one that I'm drafting. Hawkinson, the name value's there, but I know he's for sure missing the first 4. I wouldn't be surprised if it stretches to about week 6, week 7, week 8 before he's actually back out there on the field taking meaningful snaps. And so I just don't want to wait that long for a tight end on my bench, especially with Sam Darnold being the one throwing him the ball. And then Nick Chubb was the one that we were, interested to see where he would end up. Obviously, gruesome knee injury in, I want to say, week 2 or week 3 last year. But, coming through all offseason, we didn't see a ton on him coming into camp and everything. We didn't see a ton of news on, he's expected to be out for this long. Oh, he's going to be ready by week 1. There was no real buzz about him. And then he started putting out videos of him squatting, 450, 500 pounds. And we're like, oh, well, maybe Nick Chubb is healthy again. But the pup sort of solidifies that he's missing at least the beginning of those first 4 games, beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't necessarily scare me off of drafting him, But where you're getting him, you're drafting his teammate who is starting week 1, Jerome Ford, right next to him. And I know that Jerome Ford is healthy. I know that Jerome Ford has been efficient in this offense in place of Nick Chubb literally last season. And so if I'm having to choose between Nick Chubb or Jerome Ford, I'm going to take the certainty of, hey, I've got this guy week 1 and I know what he is in this offense, as opposed to, yeah, Nick Chubb is outstanding when he's healthy, but we know for sure it's not going to be in the first 4 games, but we don't really know when he's coming back. And if he comes back, we don't know if he's coming back 100%, right? Because that knee injury, we haven't seen him cut. We haven't seen him take any contact on it. And so really Brooks would be the only one that I would pay for here, but I pay for him knowing, I paid for him back in, May when I was doing dynasty drafts, knowing I'm not getting him for at least the first 4 games. I paid for him back in July in underdog drafts, knowing I wasn't getting him for the first 4 games. And so I'm paying for him in August, knowing at least for certain that I'm not getting the first 4 games out of him, and hoping that he's one of those late season guys that really comes on and makes my roster come to fruition.
No, it's a great breakdown. I mean, I'm just going to give you guys why I kind of would take these guys. If I'm drafting Brooks in drafts right now, I'm waiting until at least round 9. If he goes before that, that's fine. I'll bite the bullet on that one. I'm waiting until round 9. TJ Hawkinson, you could get TJ Hawkinson probably in like 13, 14 if you have an IR spot. I got him in the last round of one of my leagues and threw him in my IR. Nick Chubb, kind of similar range, that 13, 12 range. I'll consider drafting him. Everyone else, I will allow them to hit free agencies, waivers, and see what happens as the season goes on. So for week 1, we kind of already have a rumor that Hunter Henry is going to miss week 1. So when we talk about week 1, Hunter Henry might be already out. So if you're relying on Hunter Henry anywhere, you might want to look somewhere else or grab Austin Hooper if you're in a really deep league and you're literally just have Hunter Henry as your only tight end on the roster. So just to throw that out there. I did notice that. I did see that report come through. So, all right. Over to ADP risers here now. We're going to go through half this list, and then we'll go to the other half here, Tyler. So ADP risers, players have risen since we have talked about ADP breakdowns. If you haven't been listening to our show, the prior 3 weeks, we kind of went through ADP and talked about players we liked, didn't like, and things like that. So I kind of went back and looked at our ADPs that we had in other Birdie videos and who's risen since we've talked about them last. So some players that have risen, and these are players that are likely going in the first, 9 rounds or so, whatnot. Hey, Kyle, what's going on, buddy? Welcome in. So these players, first 9 rounds or so, have risen in fantasy football, and then we'll do the first half here. Isaiah Pacheco, Cooper Kupp, James Conner, James Cook, Dave Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, Rishi Rice, there's some new news on him. NFL is keeping their eye on him. So that's something to keep your eye on this weekend. We'll talk about that in a second. But Devin Singletary, Javonte Williams, and Brian Robinson all have risen up in the last 3 weeks for fantasy football. But let's go back to Rishi Rice here, since I did mention him. No suspension yet. There's some new reports saying that the NFL is keeping their eyes on him, going through their process now, whatever. Any concern there? You still drafting him in that, where's he going right now? Round 7?
Yeah. We talked about this a couple weeks ago with Rice. Until the NFL does anything, I'm drafting him. I feel completely secure in him. We talked about most off-season problems. If they aren't handled that off-season, they don't become a problem in season unless just something incredibly wrong happens. And so with the Rice situation, I doubt that there's anything that happens between now and week 18 where we don't care about fantasy that is going to push Rice out into a suspension even for a couple games. I think it's something that gets held off until next year if there is anything that happens with it, any suspension to come with it. But I think that with the season literally a week away, them coming out and saying they're just now starting their investigation, saying that they're, keeping their eyes on it, but he's not being placed on the commissioner's list. There's nothing really going on with the situation. I feel comfortable taking him where he's at. I feel comfortable if I drafted him already, especially with those discounts you were getting and enjoying those shares.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I'm still taking Rice. If he falls that round 7-8 range and on ESPN, if you draft there, you get in a bargain because he hides down that list, which is fantastic. I'm still drafting him. Even if where I did draft him, I drafted him as my wide receiver 4. I said, you know what? I'll put him on my bench and we'll see how things go for the season. And I don't expect him to miss any time, but he's a wide receiver that has wide receiver 2 upside very easily in an offense here. A couple of players I really do like who risen in the last weeks or so. It makes sense, kind of. I mean, I like Javonte Williams. Since we talked about him, he jumped a whole round, basically. Pretty okay taking Javonte Williams as my RB2 right now. Seeing Samaje Perine go kind of gave me more confidence that they're not going to have a veteran presence outside of him on this roster, in which they don't. I mean, he's the veteran presence on this roster now in this backfield. They have a lot of young youthful players. Jalen McLaughlin is on there. He's going to probably come in and become more of a complement than an actual third down back for this Broncos team here. Trying to think who else I don't understand the DeAndre Swift rise. I know it's only 4 spots, but I don't understand why he's rising up boards. James Conner makes sense. He jumps into that early 3rd round just because, he's a reliable running back in Buffalo, and we already mentioned him once. So, Coach Tyler, anyone here on that one side of the list that kind of you want to mention?
I've over the past couple weeks, I've really jumped back on the Cooper Kupp train. Not necessarily because of Puka Nakua's injury, but just a lot of people speaking, knocking sense back into me of, I want to say it was 2 seasons ago, or maybe been 3 seasons now. 3 seasons ago, Cooper Kupp was the Triple Crown winner and the Super Bowl MVP, and just had this amazing season, an amazing connection with his quarterback, right? Who had just come in, Matthew Stafford, go have a cup of coffee with him every morning, go have breakfast with him type thing. And he's dealt with injuries the past couple of years, but we see him entering the season fully healthy, which we haven't really seen these past couple of years.
That's true.
And I think that the Rams are going to throw the ball enough to make Kupp and Nakua both viable fantasy options. Now, are they both going to be top 10? Like I've seen some bold predictions. I don't know about all that. Both top 24, that's very much in the realm of possibilities. But, as much as I've hated on Kyron Williams this offseason, seeing Sean McVay say that he's returning punts now really doesn't give me faith in their run game. And so I think that they're going to, throw Matthew Stafford's arm until it falls off, and then they're going to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback after that. But Cooper Kupp, just kind of having the sense talked back into me. And I think a lot of people, since we're seeing, that was that a 7-position jump back into, the 3rd round there.
Right.
And so, Cooper Kupp, Montgomery moving up a couple spots. I think it's more just because of the Gibbs injury. We haven't seen him really come back. There hasn't been a ton of word outside of, we're taking it slow. We think he's going to be fine by week 1. But those soft tissue injuries linger, and especially a player of Gibbs' speed and what he's done on the field, or what he does on the field, that's, high chance of re-injuring something like that. And so Montgomery, I definitely understand the little bump there. Javonte, I do understand the bump. It's crazy. A month ago, we were in here talking about, Javonte get cut. Yeah, there's reports coming out of camp that he's going to get cut. And so, it's crazy coming to today where he's jumped almost a full round as he obviously makes the 53-man roster and he's the number 1 there. Crazy of us to think about.
Absolutely. On the flip side here, the other side of my list here, of course, I messed up and I have 3 people who are already on the other side of the list. But Xavier Worthy made a jump, Roma Doomsday, a lot of rookies, Brock Bowers, Brian Thomas Jr., Kelly Shakir, Rico Dowling, and Jalen McLaughlin. Again, on this side of the list here where I'm looking at like Brian Thomas jumping up, there's some hype for him near the end of the training camp here that he's gotten a little bump there, which now he's starting to be a player that I really like grabbing late and seeing whatever able to happen with him. Shakir, obviously, again, with Curtis Samuel's injury that he's dealt with kind of over the last few weeks, he's kind of a little bit of a bump. I figured he'd jump a little bit more, but Keon Coleman is still ahead of him as the top Bills wide receiver to be drafted. Not saying that should be happening, but he is. Rome Odunze jumping up 7 spots is interesting. I know that people are saying that Keenan Allen is coming into camp out of shape and whatnot, doesn't look as fast, but I still don't understand the bump for him per se. I'm not really drafting Rome Odunze this year. Maybe that's my own mistake, but I don't plan on doing that. And the biggest jump of all of these were Jalen McLaughlin jumped almost 20 spots from 166 to 164. So obviously his value is jumping now with Samaje Perine gone, and he's going to have the backup role in Denver. Coach Shaw, anyone on that list you want to mention? Anything to that?
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Brian Thomas Jr., and he's a guy that, especially in Dynasty, I have a good amount of shares of. So the quiet beginning of training camp scared me, quiet beginning of preseason, but seeing him come on has been really good. I understand the Odunze jump, especially with the Keenan Allen news. The one thing that's been sort of the roadblock for Odunze, at least in everyone's mind since he was projected to get drafted there, was, him and Keenan Allen play such a similar brand of football, and Keenan Allen, is coming off of an insane season. And so he comes in as the incumbent and holds that spot. So if he is out of shape, if he's not able to be on the field as much as everyone thought that he would, Odunze is going to be the one, eating up those reps. And so I think also, the Chicago Bears Hard Knocks has been really good. And I think that there is a lot of hype that can be derived from that, especially around the team, even though it doesn't necessarily focus on DeAndre Swift or Rome Odunze. Just has little clips of them here and there. Just seeing the team and the hype that can come behind them could be something that boosts people up, because there's a lot of fantasy players watching that every Tuesday.
That's fair. That is fair. Yeah, I've watched the first episode and I haven't watched it since, unfortunately. No, I like the Giant one better. I don't know why. That one was more fun. But yeah, these are the risers in ADP right now. But now we have to talk about some players that are falling in ADP since the last time we actually talked about them. And again, same situation. We're going to talk about one side first, then the other. Kyle said you have a great point. Hype is visible. So good for that. Good for you, Coach Tyler. So sticking with the first side here, some players that have fallen in ADP since we've talked about them over this month here. Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs, Zay Flowers, Keenan Allen, Zach Moss, Hollywood Brown, Jalen Warren, DeAndre Hopkins, Jordan Addison. And again, a lot of these players in the first 100 picks or whatever this is or so, there's a lot of reason behind it. You have injuries with Hopkins, Warren, Brown. Those are pretty obviously why you're seeing those guys fall. Addison's dealing with his own offseason issues. What I think is just kind of turning people off on him. Flowers. This is a good question. Let's talk about Zay Flowers here, because Kyle says is already too low. Why is he falling, Tyler? Why would we assume that Zay Flowers is falling right now?
Zay Flowers is someone that really has boggled me in terms of drafts, just because it is one of those teams where Mark Andrews is the number one receiver, even though he's not a receiver. And so it's kind of like how you handle the Chiefs receivers, right? Because you know that Travis Kelce is going to go out there and be the first target, first look. He's going to lead the team in targets. And so it's who's going to be the guy after that. And obviously it's going to be Zay Flowers. I'm not sure why he's falling. In my mind, talking about Mark Andrews, he was apparently in some car crash on the way to the facility like 2 weeks ago, and I don't think he's practiced since.
Yeah, it's not really practiced, no.
Yeah.
That's scaring me.
Undisclosed injuries. It's scaring me too. I have them a lot of places. But just all these undisclosed injuries, lots of speculation around it. It's like, why would you not go get Zay Flowers? Because if anything's wrong, he immediately becomes the one. And it's not like he had a bad rookie year at all, especially going out with the injuries that we saw to that Ravens team. I don't understand the dip. I don't understand why it wouldn't be why he wouldn't be stable just as is, but really I don't understand why he wouldn't be a riser with how the past couple weeks have gone for the number one target there, Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of is that some of these running backs are kind of got propped up over the last few weeks, and it could be a lot of redraft stuff, or I mean, I guess it's all technically redraft with ADP, but just some players taking more emphasis on having one of those running backs over taking a wide receiver like Flowers, who, again, if Andrews is healthy on the field, he was kind of really just a wide receiver 3 in fantasy. It really wasn't all that impressive until after Andrews went down. He started really picking up the slack for fantasy. So you're right. Maybe he should be jumping. He should be rising right now. Jonathan Santiago said, drafted Ayuk, hope he plays. If not, I still have Rice or JSN to fill spot. Well, that is a good thing to have. Yeah. I mean, the Ayuk thing is interesting. We have no idea what's going to happen. Him and Jamar Chase are very interesting. I've kind of avoided Jamar Chase in round 1. Mm-hmm. I'd rather go a different direction unless he falls to like pick 10 or 11. Ayuk, I really haven't been drafting him too much in the redraft right now. I don't know. The whole situation is like, is just kind of turning me off on what potential he has for this coming season. But again, if he does play, I mean, he should be really good again this year. I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't be good unless he just doesn't try.
Yeah.
So
he's a guy that I've personally stayed away from all draft season. Like, I don't think I have a single Brandon Ayuk share, just because it's one of those, usually it's, hey, I'm going to stay here, but you just need to pay me, like a CD Lamb situation. Like, he wasn't asking out. So we see Ayuk basically demand a trade, like, hey, you're not going to pay me. It's obvious. Just let me go somewhere that they're going to pay me. And so we see Washington, we see Pittsburgh pop up, and it's like, oh, they have the deals in place, plus San Francisco's offered him basically everything he's asked for. And he, has to choose if he wants to go on the trade and then look for an extension, or if he wants to take the extension that the 49ers are offering, that they're just about meeting every one of his demands to make. Right. And he's still just kind of like a fly in the wind. I heard Washington is no longer looking to trade for him. Pittsburgh, they really do need to trade for him. So it would surprise me if there's still players in that game.
That's true.
It's just this dead silence so close to the season, but also just a dead silence that we've seen all offseason of like, I don't want to be anywhere near that situation because, he's going right there at the end of the 3rd round.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste my pick on a guy that's going to hold out for 4 games and then come back and not be in shape. So I'm waiting another 4 games for him to be back to game speed. And then that's halfway of the season. And then it's going to
get into our question here from John. He plays week 1 and he hasn't been at training camp all off season, obviously. He was been there, but he's not training. Would you start Rice week 1 or would you start Brandon
Ayuk? Let me look matchups because that is also going.
So Rice plays the Ravens and Ayuk plays the Jets week 1.
I feel like I'd have to go Rice on that just because the Jets secondary is so good on its own that having that compiled with not being really, in conditioning shape, I don't want to mess with that. And so, yeah, I go Rice that, especially for NFL kickoff. Mahomes is going to want to put on a show, they're raising the banner. So go out there, go score a touchdown, all the good things.
Yeah, I would be on starting Rice too. I think it's just a safer option, even though maybe Ayuk has more potential upside. But it is a little risky to start him week 1. I want to make sure he's back in form, playing against a tough matchup before I put him on the field. So I like that. Rice definitely, especially since Thursday, possibly Hollywood's Browns out. Probably going to see a lot of targets. Kyle, yep, that is exactly right. So definitely makes more sense. All right. So on the other side of ADP fallers here, we have a lot of rookies here, actually. Ladd McConkey, Trey Benson, Keon Coleman, TJ Hawkinson, Kirk Cousins, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Lockett, Jahan Dotson obviously took a drop. Rashard Rasheed's taking a drop. Josh Downs obviously is taking a drop. And again, a lot of these, like with Samuel, with Hawkinson, with Downs, it's all injury related. Dotson, we obviously know that switching teams, becoming the 3rd or 4th, 5th option, potentially on the Eagles, definitely drops you out of any real draft value. Shaheed's also been banged up. I'm not overly concerned with Kirk Cousins overly, but some of those rookies are dropping. I don't know if you had any say why. Any reason why? I mean, I don't have any reason why they're dropping.
It's just the hype is finally kind of evening out. Going through, if you're someone that drafts at the beginning of the preseason, and that's where we're getting a lot of our ADP from when we were first doing these shows. The rookie hype is all there because these aren't dynasty drafts that you're doing. And so people are like getting their first chance to get the Marvin Harrisons and the Ladd McConkeys and the Keon Colemans and all these guys. And Marvin Harrison has really kind of stayed put ADP wise. But I think it's just evening out. Guys aren't showing up in the preseason to be as dominant as everyone thought that they would be. And so, they're not going to rise in ADP. And honestly, as things sort of even out throughout drafts and get to really that point at the end here of ADP, those rookies begin to level out, even if it is just a couple spots here and there.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, listen, if people are going to continue to let Benson and McConkey fall, be my guest. That's great value for him in the double-digit rounds. I'm all aboard on that. But again, everyone else, it kind of makes sense below. Injury-related, they're all kind of falling down right now on board. So let's see. What did Jonathan say? I drafted Ayuk because he fell. I was able to get Wilson, Adams, Gibbs, then Ayuk. In round 4, Ayuk, I mean, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, that's a great third option, honestly, because you don't need to start him right away. And you can see what happens. And if he does well, trade him away. It's not a bad option. All right, over to our next segment here, draft strategies. Woohoo! All right, so obviously, if you're still drafting this weekend, you want some different strategies to talk about because we've talked about all the players already. We've talked about players we like, players we dislike, but how do some of these players fall into the strategies that you might have heard about? Because we don't talk about draft strategies too often on the show here, but I figured it would be smart to kind of go through some targets at these strategies. We'll go through each one real quick. Coach Tyler, we're just going to name off some players that we like. Based off these strategies. You don't have to go too crazy in detail, but we'll start with the first one, hero RB. If you don't know what hero RB is, it's essentially taking one running back early and then waiting until 7, 8, 9, 9th round and grabbing a second RB and starting to fill your RB slots here. So Coach Tyler, is there anyone that you like to take early that you want to grab?
Yeah, I'm really the only two guys that I'm really anchoring my team with for a hero RB is a Bijan or a Brees. And that might be the simple way to look at it, but those are 1 and 2. And those are really the two guys that I see as, preseason, if I'm going to plant my flag and not draft a running back for the next, 5, 6 rounds, the guy I want is one that's projected to be the RB1. And, most variables outside of our control aside, those are the two guys that can do it, right? At least in our minds. And so here RB, I'm in the beginning, or I'm in the, middle to back part of my first round. The top 6 receivers are gone. And it's, do I want a Garrett Wilson or do I want Breece Hall? Do I want Garrett Wilson? Do I want Bijan Robinson? And that's when I look at where the turn's going to come to me. And that's when I start to like those running backs, because the receivers coming up over the next couple rounds will usually get me where I want to go to the value of my next running back.
Yeah, I haven't seen Breece Hall or Bijan fall past 6 in any of my drafts so far. So, I mean, those would them and obviously CMC. And I think I would throw Jonathan Taylor in there, or guys that if I wanted to take an RB first and then kind of switch my direction and go elsewhere, that's the kind of strategy I would do for hero RB. I've always liked hero RB. I like doing hero RB in Dynasty. But again, we're not talking Dynasty right now. We're talking redraft right now. And I think that strategy still does work a lot based on the drafts that I've done so far. You could get some really good value in the later rounds that we'll talk about when we get to zero RB. So like taking one of those 4 players and then waiting on running back, getting your wide receiver set up, your tight end, your quarterback, those things can work in hero RB for you. Now, this is a new one that I swear I heard it, but maybe I'm just making it up. It's double hero RB. And to me, the way that I think that this strategy is being able to get a running back in the first 3 rounds and then completely waiting until round 10 or later to get any other running backs. You just start filling up your wide receivers, you get your tight end, you get your quarterback. And then not until double digits is then you start getting other running backs and getting backups for these running backs here. And again, we'll talk about the backup running backs when we get to zero RB. But I think double hero RB is interesting for me personally, because if I could get, again, if I'm looking at the early rounds, so I'm going to get a Brees Hall and then Isaiah Pacheco late in round 2, or if I'm going to get a Jonathan Taylor and Jahmyr Gibbs in late of round 1 and early round 2 here. Like, I'm kind of okay with that, because if I get those guys, I don't need another running back for quite a while. And then I can just grab bench players, backups, and hope that some of those zero RB approach players you want to get later can really help you when you need them the most. If you hopefully you take that risk with taking running backs, those 2 running backs early, you don't really need to go get another running back for a while, which can allow you to get a lot of wide receivers, get your high-end tight end, get your high-end quarterback if you like that way to go. I think it's an interesting strategy. I'm going to definitely try it at least once in one of my few drafts that I have left here and see kind of how it works.
I really like I've pulled a couple double hero RBs where I'm just going first and second round running backs just with the way that the board falls to me. But one of my favorite things to do with that, I've talked about it, I think a couple weeks ago, is if I end up with a Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley stack at the 1-2 turn, is going in a couple rounds later because I have my 2 RBs and stacking whichever rushing quarterback they have connected to them, whether it be an Anthony Richardson or a Jalen Hurts, and making that a little cheat code rushing touchdown attack, because those guys are all going to find the end zone, right? And so I'm getting, in Philly, I'm getting Saquon Barkley if he can rush it in from the 5, and if he can't, I'm getting the tush-push touchdown there.
Barkley too, yeah. Barkley makes sense.
Yeah. Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, they're going to run read option like crazy on the goal line. One of them is going to score the touchdown, and it's not going to matter because I have both of them on my team. So that's how I've been playing double hero RB, really, just to give myself that added, rushing bonus, rushing efficiency with it, just because you're waiting so long to get another running back that there's a little cheat code that you can work into it.
That's fair. I do like that strategy with double hero RB. Going over to the next one here, 0 wide receiver. Again, this one isn't very popular. This one's very not popular at all. But again, I figured I'd mention it because people might like different types of strategies to kind of go off of. This kind of works with, double hero RB, because you get your running backs, like I mentioned early. You can then, again, go for a third running back if you really want to, if you really like to have that security at running back. But again, the hit rate, unfortunately for late round wide receivers, is not as high as late round RBs. I feel like you can just get yourself an RB1 in those late rounds. And I feel like it's not as common. Again, happened last year with Puka, but not very common to see one of these late round wide receivers jump up and be a wide receiver 1 for your team. But again, if you do like that strategy, you like having a stable core at running back, and you like, hey, I'm going to take my wide receivers later. I mean, you're looking at guys like that I think could work in round 6, round 7. And that's when you hit the 0 RB, around 6 and 7. You're looking at Amari Cooper. You're looking at T. Higgins, George Pickens. Guys have upside. Guys who have high target volume. Terry McLaurin, I think, is a perfect wide receiver 1. If you wait until that round 7 range, that I think is going to have a really big season this year, that you could take that approach there. And then again, grab a Rishi Rice in the next round, grab a Godwin, a Calvin Ridley, grab some of those guys after. That you have 3 solid running backs. You have a quarterback and a tight end. But again, I'm not a big fan of the strategy, but it is a strategy that could work in the right situation. Coach Tyler?
Yeah, I'm a big, air raid guy. Obviously, can't go 0 wide receiver. But yeah, there's just the amount of running backs being taken in those early rounds.
It's a lot.
It doesn't play out well enough for your team like the strategy did, a decade ago when, the bulk of your first rounds was running backs anyways. And so, it's not one that I have ever really tried. It's not one that I plan to try just because I don't want to try and dig myself out of that hole. But I mean, if you want to go for it, go for it. Like Coach Steve said, there's not a lot of success behind it. There's not a lot of proven success with it. But if that's where your heart feels led, if you just want to run the ball down someone's throat, then you go 0 wide receiver. You set your team up to be the running back king. Or what you really do is just draft all the running backs and then trade them all for the receivers that you really want at value, because every other team is going to need running backs at that point.
That is true. That is true. People will pay up for running backs over paying up for wide receivers, I believe. So, all right, zero RB. Obviously, we mentioned all these RB things already. Zero RB, you basically rate until around 6 or 7 and get your first running back off the board here. And I think this year it can work kind of nicely. I mean, there's some guys that I'm okay targeting in that round 7, 6 range. Like, going for like Zamir White, Raheem Mostert, Tony Pollard, Javonte Williams. Like, I'm cool taking those guys as my RB1 and RB2 if necessary. And again, there are guys in later rounds that I really want to go after, going to get Brian Robinson Jr., taking the chance on Jonathan Brooks late. I'm trying to think of other players like the Trey Benson, the Bucky Irvings, the Blake Quarms, like taking those guys as your 3, 4, 5 running back. Like, that's a strategy that could pay off because you were set at wide receiver. You went early wide receiver. You got some elite players. You got an elite quarterback like tight end, whatever. And now if, God forbid, something happened to Kerryon Williams, something happens to James Conner, and you got RB1s or high-end RB2s in those later rounds, the team's set. So zero RB does work. It worked for me last year a couple times. Last year I went Kerryon Williams and Raheem Mostert, late-round picks. They end up hitting. And I had an elite wide receiver core and elite position surrounding him. So it works. We have a question chat from Max. If you have the 4th pick, you go Chase, right? If you have the 5th pick, you go Breece Hall or Amon-Ra.
I don't go Chase.
Scenario.
Yeah, I don't necessarily go Chase. He's a guy that I kind of moved down just because of inconsistency. I'm a guy that's big on, I want consistent production. So I'm going to take a guy like Amon-Ra over Chase because he might not have the 35, 40-point weeks, but he's going to be consistently getting me, 15, 17, and then a little boom game of 25 here and there. But Chase is a guy that I moved down under guys like Amon-Ra and possibly even Justin Jefferson, depending on how this holdout looks. So if I had the 4th pick, I'm looking to go either an Amon-Ra or possibly a running back with a Bijan or a Breece. Because, I wouldn't think Bijan's off the board there. Now that CD signed, most likely going to go CMC, Tyreek, CD in some order. So at 4, I'm looking either Amon-Ra or Bijan Robinson. But if you feel led to go Chase, go Chase.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I think I would take Chase 6th at that point, then 7th. And it's not Chase. It's mostly just what's going on with Chase. He's disgruntled about, his contract situation. Yes, he has tremendous upside. And taking him in the 4th pick to his talent, it makes sense. But again, there is inconsistencies that Coach Tyler just said there. If something happens to Joe Burrow, things could get a little tricky for Chase. T. Higgins is there, hopefully back and playing. Again, you could take him at 4. I don't have a problem with it, but I prefer consistency with Breece Hall and Amon-Ra. And I think they offer that more at the 4th, 5th pick that you just can't. It's hard to pass up, even with the upside that Chase offers us with getting, 3 or 4 games where he's over 30 fantasy points. There's the inconsistency what keeps me from taking Chase at 4, but you can. And I understand why you would want to. Travis C. said, I received Tank Dell, give up Keon Coleman and Jonathan Brooks. I'm assuming this is Dynasty. Let us know if it's Dynasty or redraft. Let's start with redraft. You taking Dell and redraft over those guys or in a trade? 2 for 1.
I feel like I'm taking that's hard. Because if I'm looking at Dell, he's the number 3 option for the Texans. But Coleman should be the number 3 option for the Bills.
He struggled this offseason, so.
Yeah. He should be behind Khalil and Kincaid, in my mind. Coleman's the 3 there starting out. And so you're trading a 3 for a 3, both high-powered offenses, and then giving Brooks.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We have breaking news. Brandon Ayuk signed a 4-year deal with the 49ers. Coming to you live here on the Fantasy Coaches.
Wow.
4-year deal extension today. Hold on, I'm pulling it up right now. Finally, this went through. Yes. He will be tied to San Francisco the next 4 months. 5 years. 4 months. 5 years. So, Jonathan, if you're still listening, Ayuk's back. I love him. But
great,
yeah,
what's my value for him now?
Yes, love the value. Jump the value up for him. But yeah, Travis, I'm not a big Tank Dell fan, personally. That's how I feel. I would probably not make that deal. I mean, it's fine. I think it's a fine deal. Again, I've never been high on Tank Dell, and I'm okay to get proven wrong during the season if he has a great year. And if you believe in the talent, like a lot of people do, that's fine. I'm not a big Tank Dell fan. I just think that he's the third option, like Coach Tyler said.
Yeah.
Again, but you're not giving up a lot. I think Keon Coleman struggled this offseason. I don't know if he's going to have a great first year, and Jonathan Brooks might take him until week 10 to really have a job to himself. And then by then, are you really in the playoff contention if you don't have a stud running back? So, I mean, I get it. I get the trade for that, whether it's redraft or not redraft, or dynasty. It's fine. It's a fine
redraft.
Deal.
I wouldn't take it with Jonathan Brooks in there, but if I could switch out someone of lower value, I would take that. Just the relationship that Dell has with Stroud, as much as people want to look analytically, sometimes you have to remember that these are real guys playing football, right. And Tank Dell is CJ Stroud's best friend. And so he's going to force him the ball at some point, and Dell's going to be wide open and score some big touchdown. I don't love giving up Jonathan Brooks just because of what he could be in the later part of the season, and not knowing what that's going to be. I would kind of hate to do it right now. Yeah. So for redraft, I don't love this deal with Jonathan Brooks in it. If you could throw someone lower value in, not necessarily lower value than an injured Jonathan Brooks for half the year, but just someone not Jonathan Brooks who's not going to, destroy your team, I would probably take it. Now, if it's dynasty, I'm not taking this at all, just because Jonathan Brooks projects to be so valuable for the next however many years. But
I'm just really high on Jonathan Brooks, and that's personally why I'm not a big fan of the trade personally. But again, if you're the Tank Dell believer, and a lot of people are, it makes sense. All right, Max is back here. Where does Brandon Ayuk go now? What round does Brandon Ayuk go in? I think he's an early third round pick.
Yeah, I say he's early third. He might creep into the second, just with people being excited about him.
But if you look who's going in the third, in the second round, he might be the best option, to be honest. Like, do we trust 32-year-old Devontae Adams? Am I trusting Marvin Harrison completely? Am I trusting? I'm trying to think who else is in that range there at that point. Olave, Mike Evans. Like, I think I might want Brandon Ayuk in round 2 now. Definitely not round 4 pick.
Yeah, if you can get him in round 4 still, go do it. But
yeah, if you got that value, you worked out good. Yeah, Kyle said, well, look at that, just in time for the coach's live stream. Yes, it is.
He was just waiting for us to go on.
It was 120 over the next 4 years too. So yeah. Good for Brandon Ayuk finally babying his way into a contract. Good for him. All right, real quick here. Is there a quarterback or the target late and early that you're looking to do right now? Give me one for each.
My early quarterback target, it's still going to be Josh Allen. We saw him still put up pretty consistent QB1 numbers in the back end of last year with Stephon Diggs somewhat disappearing. And that's a big sign of how efficient he still can be. We saw QB9, QB17, QB2, QB6, QB4 for weeks 14 through 18. So obviously not the QB1 overall numbers, but he can still be consistent in that. And I think they're going to have fine-tuned this offense to help him, especially with that double tight end set. But Josh Allen is he's the QB. He's been the QB1 for, the past, was that 3 out of the past 4 years for a reason. And so I have no reason to doubt him until he proves me wrong. I was not a big Gabe Davis guy. He had 1 or 2 big games every year to help Josh Allen's production. So the loss of him doesn't necessarily destroy Josh Allen. Losing Stephon Diggs is hard. But with how he performed the back half of the year and how Allen was still able to hold that title, I think rushing wise, he still has enough value.
Let's see. I like that. Max with another question. 10-man league, what picks are more ideal than others?
I'm a big middle of the pack guy in 10-round leagues. 5, 6. I had a couple 10-mans that I've been drafting just with some, buddies from back home. And I really like that, 5, 6, 7 range just because you get the quicker turnarounds. I'm a guy that likes sitting in the middle. I don't want to have to wait, 18, 19 picks between my first pick and my second pick. And so I like sitting in that middle range. If you can end up there, I don't know, a lot of my leagues like that, we just randomize the draft order and you really hope you're in the spot that you want to be in. But I really don't like being on the edges of it because you're either losing out on so much time between players or
reaching.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't have that quick enough turnaround to make it worth taking someone at value.
Yeah, I mean, I did a analysis on some of my leagues I've had for like 8 to 10 years. And I was like, well, what picks won the championships for people? And consistently, I'd say about 60%, and this is like 18 years between two leagues, 5, 6, 7 range have been the most consistent champions in my leagues. And again, every league's different, obviously, but just very weird that is such a high number there that it intrigues me that if I can get 5, 6, or 7 in a 10-man league, and these are all 10-man leagues, those are more ideals to me than others currently. So, let me just do the late and early tight end real quick, and then we'll move on to our last slide here. So for me, early tight ends, if I'm looking to take a tight end early, I'm looking at Trey McBride personally in round 5. That's where I'm looking at for tight ends. I think that Kyler Murray will be able to keep both him and Marvin Harrison happy with a lot of targets going their way, with a lot of not so much talent outside of that, unless you're a big Michael Wilson fan. Late rounds, I mean, I think if you wait until the top tier tight ends go and you end up with Evan Ingram or going with Pat Freiermuth, I think you're okay with that. Again, I'd rather have one of the top tier guys, but again, if you're going late tight end, that's an ideal spot to get them in the round 7, 8, 9 range. Or if you really want to wait, Tyler Conklin in late rounds, go for the complete lateness. You might have other players that are better than him going, but in a deeper man league, he's a guy that I don't mind having on my team. So
yeah, I echo all 3 of those. Evan Ingram, he's going to go out there and get you wide receiver type targets, and so he's not bad to have. And if you watch Jacksonville's last preseason game, I think he caught both of Trevor Lawrence's touchdowns. So obviously that relationship is strong and budding.
Yes. And our last slide of the night, these are kind of some sleepers, week 1 waivers. We don't really do a week 1 waiver wire because y'all drafted and nothing's changing between now and next week, unless you're signing new contracts. So we have some week 1 waiver wires, just some guys that I think are interesting that you might want to consider picking up post-draft. Some of these guys might be rising, obviously, after this weekend, or if you're still drafting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they might be picked at this point. But like guys, we'll do quickly here. I'll go from the one list first. Some guys that you could pick up off waivers, or if you're looking for like a last pick in your drafts, Jordan Mason now looks like the backup in for the 49ers. Obviously, we mentioned Dalvin Cook already. Ray Davis, did mention Michael Wilson, the upside potential for him, Demario Douglas. Bucky Irving's a guy I really like a lot that I've been picking up late in my drafts. Guy that you could probably pick up waivers after your drafts are over. Tyler Conklin, A.D. Mitchell. Falcons defense, I think that's something that really people aren't taking advantage of. If you play in DST, we don't talk about that too much here, but all the moves they've been making are very interesting, and that's somewhere that I'm looking to take my type defense if I happen to just skip out on defense. And Samaje Perine now. Especially landing with the Chiefs here. Coach Tyler, anything you want to say about these guys, or anyone I might be missing that you're considering late or off waivers?
No one necessarily that I'd be considering outside of these guys. Jordan Mason is a guy that kind of piques my interest. We've seen, I want to say it's calf strain for CMC, and Elijah Mitchell we just saw got put on season-ending IR. So as of right now, it's Jordan Mason if CMC can't go. And if CMC can go, he's probably not going to be 100%. So they're still going to be cycling him out. So Jordan Mason might be seeing a lot of week 1 touches in a 49ers offense that's extremely efficient. He's a guy that I would love to get out of this. And then obviously, like we talked about, Dalvin Cook, we don't know what that backfield is going to look like. So maybe you're the one to take the shot and hit. And if not, you can see what happens in week 1 and drop him in week 2.
Fair. That is very fair. All right. Well, we are going to wrap things up here, guys, because I have a draft in the next 10 minutes. So I got to get ready for that. But hopefully this helped you guys with some of that last-minute fantasy talk that we just mentioned here. Hopefully there's some players there that you got your answers questions to, or just another refresher for this weekend here. So, again, if you guys need any help, please hit us up over on our Twitter at Coaches Fantasy. More than happy to answer any draft questions for you guys there. If you're looking for last-minute advice or if you're stuck on a pick, just hit us up. We'll answer you pretty quickly. So, Coach Tyler, anything you want to say before we get going?
Yeah, no, go hit us up on Twitter. If you're watching live, me and Coach Steve have both of our X handles on here. Also, go check out Dynasty Nerds. Coach Steve has been grinding out a ton of work for them, but a lot of work being done over there, doing what we're doing here, right? Just in the reading form. Some people like to read. I don't know who you are or why you are the way you are, but some people like to read. So if you want to go read some good preseason content, good ADP, and then a lot of good stuff in season, go check out the Dynasty Nerds. Use code COACH.
Yeah. I will be writing my weekly 11,000 word papers every week. So I'd be happy if you would tune in so someone actually reads it. So, but again, for the fantasy coaches, we'll be back on Mondays, not next Monday, obviously, because of the holiday, but Mondays following week one, we'll be back at some point, likely late night, maybe earlier, depends on my schedule. We'll be doing waiver wires, talk about maybe some players on the weekend, something like that. And on Thursdays, we will be doing at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Every Thursday, we will be doing our start and sit show, breaking down each positions, talking about players to start that are on the border, some players not to start. It's going to be a lot of fun this year. And Coach Steve will be back for that. So we're going to have the three of us going all season for you guys to help you guys win some championships. So we can all benefit from being champions. So thank you guys all for listening. Tune in until next time, everyone. Have a great holiday weekend.
Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of claws.